everything that I ever want to feel when I'm reading a romance book, I felt while I was reading this. This reading vlog has just been going exceptionally well. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today we're going to be starting on a reading vlog. And in this reading vlog, I'm going to be reading 4 of my most anticipated books that are coming out this year. And that is going to include 2 different romance books and 2 different thrillers. So one of the romances that I read in this video is this new romance book called Starshipped by Cat Sebastian. And this one was actually one of my recent aardvark picks for the month of March. And I have never read anything by Cat Sebastian, but this one in particular really sounded like it could be right up my alley, because this one is a male-male romance that follows these 2 actors. They've been starring on this sci-fi show together for like 7 years, and everybody really ships their characters together on the show, but in real life they can't stand each other. Honestly, this sounds like a book premise that was written just for me, so I knew that I had to read this one for the video. The other romance book that I ended up picking up in this video is this one called And Now Back to You by B.K. Borison. This book is technically the sequel because First Time Caller is the first book in the series, but I do think that this one could be read as a standalone. And this is a romance book that really intrigued me, not only because I was a pretty big fan of First Time Caller, I thought it was so cute, but also because this is a romance book that follows 2 meteorologists, and they're kind of competing against each other. And this book was also one of my recent book of the month selections for the month of March, so I really wanted to read this one soon. And then the 2 thrillers that I end up reading in this video, one of them is an arc, and it's called Man of My Dreams. This one is a thriller that's actually going to be publishing in the month of June. I did get approved on NetGalley for an arc of this one on my Kindle, and this is a book that really intrigues me premise-wise, because we're following this woman who's a romance author, and she has this weird situation where she like meets this man in New York City, and she thinks that he's her book character, because she notices a lot of similarities between this real-life man and the character that she's writing in her book. And so she's kind of like trying to figure out what's going on and how that could be possible, and that is one of my favorite book premises that I've ever heard. I just love that premise so much. It sounds like this is like Ashley Poston, but like make it a thriller. So I was really excited to check out Man of My Dreams. And then the 4th and final book that I'll be reading for this video is the new Robin Harding. This one is Strangers in the Villa. It's the latest thriller from Robin Harding, and I'm pretty sure that I've read every single thriller that Robin Harding has come out with. I just really enjoy the way that she writes her thrillers, and I'm especially excited for this one because I've heard that it takes place in Spain. So those are the 4 books that I'll be reading in today's video. Let me send you back to about a week ago when I started on the first one. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the reading vlog. So I have had a really busy morning. It's actually been a really busy week, and I've been squeezing in time to read whenever I can. And I have my first reading update because I have been reading Starshipped by Cat Sebastian, and I'm now about 126 pages in, and so I thought now would be a great time to update you because I am loving this book so much. This is actually my first book that I've ever read from Cat Sebastian, and I've been hearing really great things about this author for a while, especially like there's a lot of people on my Patreon that really seem to love this author, and anytime I'm doing reading sprints, this author's name just keeps getting brought up. And I've been meaning to read this author for a really long time, so when I saw this as an aardvark pick this month, I knew that I had to pick it up, especially because this one is a male-male romance that involves these 2 actors, which is something that I have historically enjoyed in the past. I do tend to love romance books that follow actors, and what's really interesting and really unique about this one is that we're following these 2 actors named Simon and Charlie, and for 7 years they've been starring together on this really big sci-fi show that's called Out There. It's definitely the kind of show that airs like 22 episodes every single season. It's something that they're filming for like 9 months out of the year, and it really like takes up a lot of their time. And they've really gotten to know each other a lot over these last 7 years of being on the show together. These 2 actors, Charlie and Simon, they're kind of known for like not being able to stand each other. Like they don't really like each other very much. And it's mostly because Simon views himself as being like a little bit more of a serious actor, whereas like Charlie, I guess before this show, you know, like he was on reality TV and he just always has his shirt off and like nobody's ever really taking him that seriously. So I think in some ways Simon kind of thinks that he's like a better actor, or like he's above this guy. And so now this story's taking place where they've been shooting the show together for about 7 years, and Simon's seriously considering leaving the show. And because they're kind of afraid of not only Simon's reputation, but also Charlie's reputation on the show, and just kind of like the show's reputation in general, they decide that they want to like stage this friendship to make people think that they're on good terms, just so that it doesn't completely blow up the show when Simon leaves. Then it says, when an emergency calls Charlie away, that means Simon comes along. So then there's almost this like road trip situation where Simon's going to be joining him on the road, and they're going to be trying to like take as many pictures with fans while they're on the road as they can to try and make it seem like they're having some bonding time and they're taking a road trip together. I am just really loving the writing in this book so far. Like there's something so hysterical about the writing, and like their banter is just so good. I love the way that this book is discussing how a lot of people have like shipped their characters together over the years, and even the way that the actors admit themselves that like the writing of their characters does feel a little bit romantic at times. I love when he says Charlie grabs Simon's collar in a way that's 50% menacing, 50% affectionate, and will be cherished forever and gift immediately by queer spaceship enthusiasts. And then I love the way that Simon even speculates himself. He's like, is Charlie like trying to play this romantically? When he's like, his character is too buttoned up to play anything romantically, including actual romantic scenes. But sometimes he thinks Charlie is playing it romantically. And he says they've spent years writing lines and entire story arcs for him and Charlie that are pretty romantic, and yet their characters keep getting paired with women. And then they said, but it's network television, and a queer romantic relationship between main characters is probably a step too far. I'm sure we have been watching so many shows over the years that do this thing that we call queer baiting. It's like they give these two male characters the most romantic storyline, and then they never give us the romance. Like, I'm talking about Dean and Cass on Supernatural. I'm talking about Mike and Will on Stranger Things. It's like we see this happen again and again and again, right? And I just love that this book is so self-aware of that, and that it's like really calling out the writers. I'm also just really, really loving Simon's character, especially in general, because we're mostly reading from Simon's perspective at this point in the book, and I feel like he's so relatable in a lot of ways. I don't remember if it's mentioned like specifically what he's dealing with, because it might just be like an anxiety disorder or like something of that nature. Can't remember if it said exactly what he has, but he definitely is dealing with some anxiety, and some of the things that he's been talking about I relate to so hard. Like when it said historically it takes him 5 to 7 business days to process one single unanticipated emotion, and I was like, bestie, literally same. Or even such little things like when he says the fact is he just doesn't have the emotional space for new food today. I was like, that is so relatable. So Simon is a very comforting character for me to read about, because there are just a lot of little things that I just keep underlining that I'm like, I feel exactly the same way, or I know exactly what he's talking about. And the amount of times that I've already written LOL in the margins of this book, like I'm just loving this so much. They're already so cute. Like the banter is so cute. I'm feeling so much for these characters. Like I don't know why I haven't read this author sooner, to be honest, because this is exactly the kind of writing that I love in a romance. So this could not be going better. Like at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a 5-star for me. Like I'm loving these characters so much. I'm only about a third of the way into it, and I just pulled up at the park right now. I mean, I don't know if you can tell or if you can hear the rain, but it's a really, really rainy afternoon. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon right now. I don't really have any plans for the rest of my day, so I'm just gonna be sitting here in my car for a few hours.
But he still calls me baby. I haven't played nice yet, he still wants me. I give him hell, but heaven sent him. Calm down, there's no more second guessing. I'm coming to my senses. He's been here all along, and yeah, he's all mine. Right here where I left him, not taking any chances. I'm coming in hot, asteroid.
Okay, hi, hello. I just got home from the park and I ended up taking a shower, and it's about 6 o'clock at night, and I'm still getting used to daylight savings. Like, I love the fact that the sun is still out at this hour. The sun doesn't go down until 7 now. This is what dreams are made of. Also, please excuse how messy my room looks, because I am aware of the fact that my room is very messy right now. Life is just a little bit chaotic at the moment, but I wanted to update you because I've already finished reading Starshipped, and like the way that I devoured this book in one afternoon. I really struggled to put this book down because of how much I loved it, and not only was this an easy 5 out of 5 stars for me, but I actually think this is one of my top favorite books that I've read this year. I've been debating since finishing this book. I'm like, is this my favorite romance that I've read so far this year? I loved this. I think right now it's kind of a toss-up between this book and The Mashup for being like my #1 favorite romance that I've read this year. But like, these two have my entire heart. Are you kidding me? You know, this book actually reminded me a lot of some of my favorite books of all time. It definitely reminded me quite a bit of fan service, just in the way that you're following, you know, these actors that are on this really big sci-fi show that has this really big fan following, and the way that this book is also following an actor. It reminded me quite a bit of this one. And then it also did remind me of another one of my favorite romances called Stars in Your Eyes, and this is another one where it's a romance between two actors. And then it actually also reminded me quite a bit of The Charm Offensive, which this is a book that I've always considered to be one of my top favorite romances of all time. And I think the main reason why it reminded me of this book so much is because of the connection that these two had. Because in both of these stories, I can't remember exactly what it is that Charlie's character deals with, but I think he also deals with some kind of anxiety or OCD or something like that when he's in front of the camera. And a lot of this book, it's also kind of about these guys who live very public lives, because this one's taking place on the set of a reality TV show where one of the guys is essentially the bachelor and then the other guy is like a producer that's on the show. So it's not exactly the same kind of a situation, but I think because both of these characters also have a lot of eyes on them, I just think that if you adored Charlie and Dev from The Charm Offensive, then I think you're absolutely gonna love Charlie and Simon in Starshift. There was just so much that I loved about this book, and I really loved the representation of Simon's character in general, because Simon definitely does have a little bit of a disability that gets explored throughout the book, because not only does he have, like a lot of anxiety and mild OCD, but he also does talk about these migraines that he gets, and they can be pretty bad, like to the point where he's suffering for days, and he's like constantly aware of like his triggers for his migraines. So I feel like there was some really good like mental health representation in this, which is probably why it reminds me of The Charm Offensive. And I just adored these characters with my entire chest. I loved the way that their sexuality was explored in this book and how neither of them really felt any shame about being queer. I feel like that's something that's really missing actually from a lot of these romances where it's like following two actors. It's like they become so obsessed with like their image and their reputation and about people thinking that they could possibly be queer. And I feel like because that wasn't really a factor in this book, it was so refreshing. I also just really loved Simon's character in this book, and I loved being in his head and the way that he would think about like the different reasons why they became actors, because he talks about how like he thinks that Charlie became an actor because he loves the attention. But of course, Charlie likes the attention. People don't usually get into acting if they hate attention. But then he kind of starts talking about how like, Simon got into acting because he just wanted to pretend to be somebody else for a while. He really just wanted to disappear into a character. And I just thought it was so interesting the way that these characters are so different, but they understand each other on a different level. And it's just so sweet and so wholesome. Like, oh my God, the first kiss scene was so cute that I was blushing. I was actually blushing. And then like the first sex scene that they had, dude, I was laughing my ass off. I was trying to film a little bit of my reaction in the car, but like tears were streaming down my face. I was laughing and I was just like, they are so cute. Like, this is the most wholesome shit I've ever read in my life. I also think in this book, there's a lot of great commentary about, being an actor on a show of this nature and like the fandom that exists with a show of this kind that's like been on air for 7 seasons. Even do get some moments in between the chapters that are kind of like fan comments that are happening on a Discord. And I'm not gonna lie, most of the time I just skimmed over those chapters because I didn't find them to be super relevant, but I still do love and appreciate when authors include little like fan moments like that. I think it's really fun. I mean, the book is good when I nearly ran out of the pink tabs that I had. I went through 3 different shades of my pink tabs and I still ran out. I also just wanted to mention, because I know that this book talks about it in the premise about how like these two go on a road trip and how that's kind of what brings them closer together, which is true. But I just wanted to say, because typically I don't like books that involve road trips. Like, it's one of my least favorite things to read about for some reason. But I just wanted to mention that the road trip is such a small part of this book. Like, it really only lasts for like less than 50 pages, I would say. And that's really not an essential part of this story. So if you were like unsure about this one because it involves a road trip, I would say that's not a reason to not read this one, because the road trip is such an insignificant part of the story. This is one of the least toxic romances I've read in such a long time. Like, they are both cinnamon rolls. And it's crazy to even say that too, because typically I'm the kind of person that likes a little bit more angst in my romance. But there was something about the way that these two were just so thoughtful. The banter between these two was just absolutely god tier in every way. Like, they were just so cute. I was smiling the entire time. I was kicking my feet the entire time. Everything that I ever want to feel when I'm reading a romance book, I felt while I was reading this. And so I just love them. I actually had the feeling after I finished the final pages of this book where I was kind of sad, because I was like, I could have read 100 more pages, like 200 more pages about these two characters. So this is without a doubt 5 out of 5 stars. And in fact, this is probably going to make it into my top 3 favorite books that I've read so far this year. I don't know, it's so hard to choose. Like, I feel like I've had a really great reading year so far that it's tough for me to pick which books would make it into my top 5. This one would definitely be up there. Like, I'm never going to stop thinking about these two. Hello, good afternoon. I wanted to take a second to update this vlog because it's been a few days. I've been having a really busy week and my hair kind of looks crazy because last night I ended up filming this vlog for my Patreon that's called like a sleepover vlog, and I had so much fun with this vlog. I ended up reading the book called Dollface, which is like a slasher that's like Barbie meets Scream. And like, spoiler alert, but I didn't end up loving the book very much, but I'm still really happy with how this vlog turned out. And last night I asked my mom if she could like braid my hair, and then this morning when I took out the braids, my hair was just kind of like really really wavy. It reminds me of how I used to do my hair all the time in high school. But anyway, I do have a reading update because I have been reading Man of My Dreams, and this one is a thriller arc that I have on my Kindle. This book actually doesn't come out until June, but this is one that really intrigued me, mostly because of the premise for this one. I've never read a book from this author before, but the premise for this one sounded like it was going to be right up my alley, because in this book, we're following this woman named Ivy, and she is a romance author who's living in New York City. This book has incredible New York City vibes, by the way. Like, I am already loving the descriptions of New York, because she talks a lot about like the different areas of New York that I really love. And it's actually really cool too, because I love the detail that this character grew up in Tarrytown, because that's right near Sleepy Hollow, which is right where I visited in New York last year. So that's really cool. But anyway, we're following this woman who is a romance author, and she wrote this really popular bestseller that was called Haunt Me Then. And it's basically like a retelling or like a reimagining of Wuthering Heights. And like, just a heads up, this book actually does spoil Wuthering Heights. I'm actually not familiar with Wuthering Heights myself. Like, I've never read it. I haven't seen the movies, but this book actually does kind of spoil the ending of Wuthering Heights. So like, that is a little bit of a bummer, and I thought I would mention it. But anyway, we are following this character as she is, you know, living her life in New York, and she's currently on deadline for her second book that's going to be due very soon, like just within a few weeks. So something that I'm loving about this book is that we are getting so many scenes of her actually, you know, writing and like working on her manuscript, because I do love reading books that follow writers, and I love to actually get to see the behind the scenes of like what it's, you know, like to write a novel. But then one day while she's walking around New York and she's in like the Washington Square Park area, she ends up running into this guy because his dog gets like let loose, and she stops the dog from like running into the street. And then when she meets this guy, his name is Liam, and he's British, and he's like the most beautiful man that she's ever seen. And she thinks it's kind of weird because on the next book that she's working on, she's writing about a character named Liam who's British, and he's an architect who's working in New York. And it almost seems like he's the exact book character that she's written come to life, which is such a fun premise. Like, I love that. But instead of like having this be a romance, it's actually like a thriller of like the more sinister side of like what would happen for something like this. I actually loved like one of the very first things when this happened to her, she was thinking to herself like, this would be the start of a rom-com, and then she was like ... or a horror movie. And I love how I've been reading so many books lately that kind of talk about the similarities between a rom-com and a horror movie. Like, there really is so much crossover. And so I'm just really loving the writing in this book already. Like, it's so easy to get into, but I also love like some of the descriptions of New York, especially like New York in the springtime. There was this really great quote where she said, "It's my favorite kind of spring day in New York. Bright buttery sun with cool shade to cut the heat. Flowers blooming in store displays and bouquet armfuls. It feels like everyone is in love with the weather, with the city, with each other." I love that so much. As somebody who's like a huge lover of New York City, like, I love anytime a book takes place in New York. It just really adds to the atmosphere for me. But I also love the fact that this book is reading a little bit like a romance and a little bit like a thriller at the same time. That's something that I've been really craving with my books lately. Like, I love that balance. And the beginning of this definitely feels more like a rom-com, you know, as she's meeting this guy Liam, who feels like he could be her book character, and it feels almost like it's a little bit too good to be true. But I love that the further that we get into the book, the more it's starting to feel like there's something sinister. It's starting to feel more like a thriller. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I just hit part 2 of the book, and I'm now 41% of the way through. And this story has been pretty twisty so far already. I mean, I definitely have my predictions for like what could be happening. We get these like flashback chapters that are taking place 11 years ago, where it's kind of hinting at the fact that she might have had something happen to her in her past that's like the past is catching up with her kind of a thing. There's also like this really intense scene where she like opens the Goodreads page for her book, and she sees this recent like 1-star review that like catches her attention because somebody's like calling her a fraud and saying that she's like not who she says she is. And I love all of these scenes as she's like getting to know Liam, and all of these like little red flags that she's getting, like not sure if she can trust him fully. I'm really curious to see how this whole like Liam being kind of like her book character, like I'm really curious to see how that ends up panning out. And anyway, I think today I would like to try and finish reading this book today because I'm having such a good time with it. I'm actually currently doing some reading sprints right now on my Patreon. I'm on the last sprint at the moment. I have about 20 minutes left. And then I think after that, I would like to go to the gym before it gets too late in the afternoon. I don't know. It's a Friday night right now, and it's about to be like 4 o'clock by the time I get to the gym. So like hopefully there will be a treadmill open so that I could read on the treadmill. And because this one's an arc, I don't have access to the audiobook, so I will just be reading on the Kindle on the treadmill, which sometimes can be a little bit difficult. But one of my friends on Patreon here had the great idea that I should like make the font a little bit bigger while I'm on the treadmill, and that'll make it a little bit easier to read, which I think is great advice. So I think I'm gonna do that. I might actually try to make one of my little like pork rice avocado bowls that I'm obsessed with. I might make one of those later, and then hopefully I can jump back into season 10 of Supernatural later tonight with my mom, because we haven't been able to watch Supernatural these last couple of days, and like I miss them. It's like my heart hurts. I'm like, what are Sam and Dean doing? What are they up to? So hopefully at some point tonight I can finish up the rest of this book and let you know my final thoughts. hi, checking in with an update because it's about 9:30 at night and I have some reading updates. I just finished watching a few more episodes of season 10 of Supernatural with my mom, and tonight we watched the episode that was called About a Boy. That was so good, like 10 out of 10. That was definitely one of my favorite episodes of season 10 of Supernatural so far. It was so funny. I was laughing my ass off, and I was not expecting to ever hear a Taylor Swift song used in a Supernatural episode, so that was like a really fun surprise, and it was just really amazing. I've been having a great time with season 10. But anyway, I wanted to update you because earlier today, I did end up finishing the book Man of My Dreams. I actually finished it while I was on the treadmill, and I was on the treadmill for over an hour because I could not put this book down. And I think when I got on the treadmill, I was only like 55% of the way through the book, and I read the entire second half of this book because I literally could not put this book down. Like, I had to know. The ending of this book got so crazy. You know how earlier I did talk about how like I had a prediction for where I think the second half could be going, and I was definitely right about some things about the direction of the book and like where it ended up going, but I also think it is so impressive how this book is so much more than just like a story about a woman who like wrote about this character and now it seems like he's come to life. The story has so many more layers that I was not expecting, and there were so many things about the ending of this book that I found to be so shocking. There was especially one moment that I was like, bitch, are you kidding me? I wrote in all caps on my phone on my notes because like I was taking notes with this book because I wanted to remember all the details, and by the time we hit this one plot twist, I was like, bitch, shut up. Like, that's crazy. I totally didn't see that one coming. And I was really surprised by some of the plot twists at the end. I mean, yes, I will say for some of these plot twists, it's really gonna have to be the kind of thing where like you're gonna have to suspend your disbelief just a little bit, because there are some moments where I'm like, oh wow, like really? Like, okay, like that's a little convenient. By part 3 of this book, like my heart was actually racing like while I was on the treadmill, and I could not put it down because I think something that this book was doing really well was going back and forth between two different timelines, and the way it was just so fast paced, and like I thought I had a grasp on what was happening, and at times I did, but the reading experience was still just as fun for like the things that I was able to predict. I just think it was written in a way that was very engaging and really interesting the whole time. And I also loved following this character, not just because she was like a writer and an author, but I also just really connected with her story, and I just really genuinely liked her as a character. Like, I found her to be very interesting. I do think we had a few moments in this book where I was a little bit like picky with how much she seemed to be trusting him, but other than that, like I can't really complain too much with this one. Like, I had so much fun, way more fun than I thought I was going to. I know I was talking about this earlier on Patreon, how like for some reason when I'm reading on my Kindle, I swear that I can read faster than when I read physically, like with a physical book in my hand. There's something about that Kindle magic, you know, like I really can just like fly through the pages, and this one was very addicting. I'm kind of torn on what I want to rate this book because part of me does want to give this book 5 stars, but because there was a pretty big element of this book that I found to be a little bit predictable, I don't know if I can give it the full 5 stars, but I think I'm probably going to end up giving this one like 4.5 stars. I really loved it for the most part, and that rarely happens to me these days with thrillers, so it feels really good to find another book that I really enjoyed this much. Like, I can't believe I just had a 5-star romance, and now I just found a new favorite thriller. 4.5 stars is like a really high rating. This reading vlog has just been going exceptionally well, and so I'm really glad I decided to read this one today, and I highly, highly recommend checking this one out in June when it publishes. I think for tomorrow, my plan is that I want to read And Now Back to You by B.K. Borison. I think this is the next romance that I want to jump into because I was able to get the audiobook checked out from my library yesterday. Okay, hi, hello. It is now the next morning. It's about 11:30 in the morning, and I wanted to update you because last night I started reading And Now Back to You. I read about 100 pages of the book last night, and then this morning while I was making breakfast, I just continued listening to this one on audio, and now I'm on page 202. I just hit chapter 18, and I just had to update you now because what I just read in chapter 17 had me screaming. Oh my god, it was so good. My jaw was like hanging open on the floor. I was like, oh shit. No, I was really looking forward to reading this book because I had read First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is technically like the first book in the series, even though you can definitely read these books as like standalone romances. But in this book, we're following the characters Lucy and Aiden, and it's kind of fun because if you do read this book first, then you do get to see those same characters again in this book. But this book has been really fun because we're following these two characters named Jackson and Delilah, and both of them are meteorologists, which is a job that I really, really enjoy reading about. I love how the little tagline on the front cover says Weather Boy meets Weather Girl. I don't know, there's something really interesting to me about like the job of a meteorologist and like learning about the weather patterns. I know that might sound like boring, I guess, to some people, but like there's something about it. I just really enjoy it. And I think I've always enjoyed reading about any kind of jobs that involve like working for a news station or working for like a radio show or anything like that. Like, I just find it to be so fascinating. So I'm really loving the fact that they're having to work together in this book. And right at the start of this book, we learn that they kind of have like a hate to love thing going on because he thinks that she's really annoying, mostly because she parks in a spot that kind of like blocks him. And so he's like always leaving notes on her car about like how badly she's parked barking. And they just have this kind of like silly banter with each other that I think is really fun. And I think something BK Borison does so well is that she's able to balance kind of like a silly and fun, lighthearted feel to her books with a really heavy subject matter sometimes. Because I feel like both of these characters are dealing with some things that are pretty heavy. I mean, Delilah is dealing with the fact that her grandfather, like the man who basically raised her, he recently got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so there's a bit of commentary about how difficult that's been for her and like for her family. And then with Jackson, he has these two younger sisters that he's responsible for, and he's pretty much felt like completely abandoned by his mom and by, you know, their mother. And so he's pretty young himself, but he does have full custody of his two younger sisters, and he's always like, you know, taking care of them. And because of that, you know, it's almost forced him to be this like very organized and very responsible person because he wants the best for them. So I'm really liking their characters, and I love the way that this romance feels like a true slow burn, because like 200 pages in and like barely anything has happened between these two. But honestly, like that's what I prefer when it comes to romance books. Like I don't want anything to feel rushed, and I want to feel like I have a chance to get to know both of the characters before any romance even starts between them. And this book is on the lengthy side. Like this one's about like 438 pages. So the fact that I'm 200 pages in and I'm still only about like 48% of the way through it, that's pretty wild. You know, at the start of this book, I was like, yeah, like I'm enjoying this. Like it feels like a 4-star read. And now within these last like couple of chapters, it's starting to feel like it's pushing up that rating a little bit because of what's currently happening. I was just like losing my mind. Like that was so cute what just happened. I love that the main plot that's kind of happening in this book is that they're both being forced to kind of work together on this current situation that's happening. I don't want to give too much detail away because I don't know what would be considered spoilery. And we've also had some of my favorite like romance tropes in this book, like the, oh no, there's only one more hotel room. Oh no, what are we gonna do? And then of course the hotel room only has one bed. Like, oh no. I am such a sucker for the one bed trope. You have no idea. It's a god tier top favorite. And I know I'm only like halfway through the book at this point, but I might actually be rating this one higher than First Time Caller, because I think First Time Caller, I ended up giving this one like 3.5 stars overall. Like I did really love it, but I remember saying that this book just felt like it was a little bit too long. And I remember there ended up being a lot of miscommunication between these two, and that really bothered me. So like maybe it's too early for me to say, because maybe the second half of this book I'm gonna have some of those same thoughts. So like I don't know, but at this point this one feels like it could be like a 4-star, maybe even a 4.5 star, maybe even a 5-star depending on how the rest of this goes. Like I'm having a great time with this, and I actually can't believe how well this reading vlog is going. Like this is unusual, you know, like it's not common for me to read books back to back to back to back that I'm really loving. It's about midday right now on a Saturday afternoon. I don't have anything too crazy going on today. I think I might actually drive down to like a local coffee spot and pick up some coffee and bring it back. And it's actually kind of sunny outside right now. I kind of want to take advantage. Like I might just go on a walk later because I'm feeling like today might be one of those days where I want to spend most of the day just like reading in bed. I also do have a Patreon movie night later tonight for the movie Cheaper by the Dozen, which I'm so excited for because this was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I swear I've seen this movie like a million times growing up, but it's actually been so many years since the last time that I watched this movie. So I think that's going to be really fun, but that's going to be happening a little bit later tonight at 6 o'clock. So until then, I'm going to go and pick up coffee and continue reading. And now back to you. And I hope that we have a new favorite on our hands.
Mistakes that everyone is making, but I can't change. I'm stuck in reverse like an old Benz. Forgot to tap it up.
Thank you.
Now I long for another day where things fall into place. So if you're down, I'll be down. Pack your bags, fill them up. We can go tonight. Take a
Okay, hello. So many hours have passed and it is now just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just spent most of the day like hanging out at the house because I was doing a lot of cleaning and I was updating my journal and doing a lot of things while I was listening to this one on audio. I'm in my car right now because I just drove down to the library because one of my library holds came in, Strangers in the Villa by Robin Harding, which is one of the books that I was hoping to get to during this reading vlog. So this could not be more perfect because this is a thriller that I'm really looking forward to. But I wanted to update you because I just finished reading and now back to you. And I am kind of bummed to say that I do have some of the same complaints that I had from First Time Caller with this book. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really did enjoy this book a lot, and I actually think that I liked this one more than First Time Caller. I just think this book actually had so many moments that had me like squealing over them. Like they were so cute. I think this is a romance that had like 5-star moments, you know, like that's for sure. I'll never forget about that scene in chapter 17. Like that was one of my favorite things ever. I think this book does suffer from some of the same critiques that I had with First Time Caller, and the first thing is that it just feels a little bit too long. I don't think this book needed to be over over 430 pages long. I mean, as much as I love a good slow burn, which I do think this book was a pretty good slow burn, I still think that I had a lot of issues with the second half of this book, and that's why I never feel like the second half needs to be this long. Because a similar thing happens in this book where there's like a lot of miscommunication between these characters, and it's just like so ridiculous to me. I know that miscommunication does happen in real life, but it's just very annoying, because you're reading from both of the perspectives of each one of these characters, and so you know how they're feeling but what they're not saying out loud to each other, and it's just very obvious to everyone else that these two have feelings for each other, but they can't recognize that in each other. So the ending did lose a little bit of steam for me. I also think there was kind of like a shift in the plot around like halfway through, or like maybe 60% of the way through the book. There was a shift in the plot and like a shift in the storyline. After that happened, I feel like the plot started to feel a lot more serious in the second half and a lot more emotional, which just wasn't really the vibes that I was wanting from this book. I mean, I know that sounds silly to say, but I guess I just wanted this to feel a little bit more like a rom-com instead of like a romantic dramedy, because there was a lot of drama, especially in the last like 40% of this book. There was a lot of drama, not just in like their personal lives with their families and like what they were dealing with, but also like a lot of workplace drama as well that just didn't necessarily super intrigue me. One of the main plot lines in this book is kind of about how this guy is just really like targeting this girl Delilah at work, and how he just treats her so terribly because it's almost like he's jealous that like everybody just loves her so much, so he continues to treat her badly at work. I do think it's unfortunate that that probably does happen very often in the workplace for women, to deal with men who are just assholes, but I just didn't particularly care for that storyline in this book, and I felt like it kept coming up over and over and over again. And then also, this is such a small like nitpicky thing, but like there was one conversation in this book that Jackson and Delilah had where like I was kind of getting the ick a little bit from Jackson, just in the way that he was responding to her. I mean, the general conversation was about romance movies and how she was trying to say that romance movies are just as valid and amazing as like war movies. And the way that he was talking to her in that scene, he kept being like, oh my gosh, you're acting so delirious, and like, I don't know, it was almost like a little bit condescending. I just really didn't like the way that he was responding to her in that scene, and I know that that's such a specific thing, but I think it's because I'm such a huge lover of romance movies, and I cannot stand anytime I get talked down to by a man about why romance movies are just like silly, stupid, and not meant to be taken seriously. Like, I'm so tired of that conversation. But otherwise, I did really enjoy this one, and because I liked this one more than First Time Caller, I'm probably going to give this one around, I feel like it's like a 3.75, but I'll probably round up to 4 stars. There were so many moments in this book that are going to be so memorable for me looking back on it, and I also feel like because they both had a lot of trauma with their families, it really like helped them relate to each other and understand each other on a deeper level than like the other people in their lives. And I do love this author's writing so much in this series. I just wish she would cut down the pages a little bit, especially because there's so much drama in the second half that this book just didn't really need, in my opinion. I think there is going to be a third book in this series because I looked on Goodreads, and if that's the case, then I hope the third book is a little bit shorter, like please, and no miscommunication in the third book. I'm over it. Also, I forgot to mention the audiobook for And Now Back to You was also really good because it was really fun. It had like little radio like sound effects on the audiobook that just made it an extra cool listening experience, so I do recommend the audiobook. I thought the audiobook was fantastic. Anyway, as I mentioned, I'm going to be getting ready for a Patreon movie night tonight for Cheaper by the Dozen that's going to be happening in a few hours. I also did tell my parents that I'm going to be making dinner for all of us tonight because I got all of the stuff that I need to make that like Italian sausage, zucchini, cream cheese pasta that I love. I basically got the recipe from HelloFresh and I just kind of like tweak it to make it my own. How's it going? It's now the next morning. Last night ended up being a really fun night because we had my Patreon movie night for Cheaper by the Dozen. And it's so crazy rewatching this movie as an adult because it was one of my favorite movies as a kid, and I think I found a lot of comfort in that movie because I always wanted to have older siblings. Because not only am I like the oldest sibling when it comes to like me and my sister, but I'm also like the oldest when it comes to me and all of my cousins. And so I think I kind of always romanticized the idea of what it would be like to have older siblings. And I think I just love this movie because I found so much comfort comfort in the idea of having so many siblings that you could rely on. And I think I also definitely had the biggest crush on Tom Welling when I was a kid. But you know what's so crazy now watching this movie as an adult? I'm like, oh my God, like this is actually a nightmare. And because now I'm an adult who does not want children, I'm like, okay, this is actually a horror movie. This is my idea of hell on earth. And it was so funny because I was talking about the movie with my mom afterwards, and we were kind of talking about how, you know, Cheaper by the Dozen is really a movie that kind of like romanticizes the idea of what it's like to have that many kids. Whereas like the TV show Shameless, I feel like that really takes a look at the reality of what that kind of a situation looks like. That feels like a more realistic take on what it actually looks like to have that many siblings, and how a lot of the times all of the like parental responsibilities tend to fall on the oldest daughter. And so I just thought that was a really interesting movie to watch last night, because it's crazy how much my perspective on things have like changed over time. I mean, don't get me wrong, the movie was still very fun to watch because it was so nostalgic, and like the soundtrack for that movie was so good because they had like Simple Plan, they had In Too Deep. I loved Baby Hilary Duff. So it was a really great movie night, but it's just crazy watching this as an adult. I just feel so differently about it compared to when I watched it as a kid. But anyway, I wanted to update you because this morning I have started reading Strangers in the Villa by Robin Harding, and I just got 100 pages in. So I thought now would be a good time to update because I'm already really liking this a lot. I don't know, there's something about the way that Robin Harding writes her thrillers. I want to say that I've read almost every single thing that Robin Harding has published at this point. I was looking in the front and I think she's published 7 things before this, and I think this is her 8th book. And looking at all of these book titles, I'm pretty sure I've read every single one of these. Like maybe there's one that I haven't read, but I think I'm always reaching for this author's new thrillers because I just love the way that she writes them. I feel like she's the kind of author where like most of the time I only end up giving her between like 3 or 4 stars at the end of it, but there's just something so addicting about the writing in her thrillers. And so far this one is no different. And something that I'm loving about this one that feels different from her other ones is that we're following this couple named Sydney and Curtis, and they were living in New York, and now they're going to be like starting their lives over again in Spain. And so this one is actually taking place in Spain, which is really cool because I don't think any of her other books have done that. But the reason why they're moving to Spain is because Curtis actually cheated on her. He slept with one of his clients back in New York. It nearly destroyed their marriage. And so she's kind of been debating if she wants to give him another shot. And so he has the idea like, well, why don't we get away out of New York? Why don't we move to Spain and kind of try to like start over with each other? And so that's what they're doing. And in between the chapters of like what's happening with them in Spain, you do get to see some of their counseling sessions that they're having with this therapist. But what's really interesting and what makes this book, you know, feel like a thriller is that one day when they're at their new place in Spain, this couple shows up on their doorstep and they claim that they're having some car trouble and that their van isn't starting. And this couple's this young Australian couple, and they decide to like let them in and let them charge their phones and like help them figure shit out. And they figure out that their van needs this part that's not going to be able to come in for like 10 days. And so they're both kind of panicked. And so our main girl, Sydney, offers to let them stay at the villa where they live. And so this book is about how basically these strangers are going to be staying at their house for the next couple of days. I love a premise like this. Like, I know it feels so unrealistic that you would just be like, oh yeah, like let me let this complete stranger live with me for a while. And I think that's why I love a book with a premise like this, because it feels so unrealistic and ridiculous. That's exactly what fiction is for, you know, to explore these things that would probably never happen in real life, but it's so entertaining to read about in fiction. And I'm already just loving the dynamic between Sydney and this Australian couple. Like, it's just so fascinating. And I think that's what Robin Harding actually does best, where she has these like characters who are complete strangers, you know, like interacting with our main characters, and just the tension that she's able to build so easily between the characters. It is really interesting to me. Also do think part of the mystery in this book that I'm finding to be pretty interesting is the fact that Sydney, back when she was working in the States, she was actually working as an attorney. And there's this case from her past that keeps coming up that she was like dealing with while she was going through, you know, like the loss of her mother, and while she was dealing with her husband cheating. There might have been this case where something happened during that time that's gonna like come back to haunt her. So that also seems like part of the mystery that's happening in this book. But I love a setup like this because I love trying to figure out like, okay, is it the couple that's shady? Like, is it the couple that's like bringing this chaos into their lives? And if so, what is their motive? I just love a book with a premise like this. So I'm having a lot of fun with this so far. I don't know if I'm gonna get the chance to finish the book today because today is Oscars Sunday. So my sister's gonna be coming over very soon because we're gonna be watching the Oscars together this afternoon. We're probably gonna be eating some pizza. It's gonna be a really great night. And I can't wait. Oh my gosh, I wanna see Sinners win absolutely everything at the Oscars tonight. I know Sinners is already making history because it's the most Oscar nominated film of all time with 16 nominations. And so I'm really hoping that Sinners wins big tonight, and I can't wait to see it happen. But I'm hoping I can read some more of the book a little bit later tonight, and I'll probably try to finish it up by tomorrow. Okay, Rachel brought her Oscar card prediction voting cards, and we just finished filling it out. There's some categories that are so tough on this time. Also, Mom brought the crackers out here with the cutest little plates. Look at these plates. So cute. And Rachel did our makeup. Sorry, I was panning the camera. Rachel did our makeup. Look at Mom. Oh my gosh.
She did a great job.
So cute.
I don't know who this person is.
Wow. So beautiful. Look at that. I look like a Barbie. Just the slow pan as it gets to us. Yeah, very excited for the Oscars. I think I'm hoping Sinners is going to win big tonight. We'll see if it wins Best Pick. I feel like it's either going to go to Sinners or it might go to One Battle After Another, would be my prediction.
I think it depends who wins Best, whoever wins Best Actor, I think it'll depend. Yeah. Because if Michael B. Jordan wins Best Actor, One Battle After Another, I feel like might win Best Picture then. Yeah,
same with like director, because if they give director to Hamnet, then I
don't even think Ryan Coogler's won any.
I know. I want to see Ryan Coogler win Best Director, but I don't think he will. I think it will go to Hamnet.
Writing, maybe.
Yeah, maybe screenplay. I don't know. I was saying I think the biggest like shocks for me would be if Timothée Chalamet actually wins Best Actor. I think I'd be pretty shocked. Like I really wanted to go to Michael B. Jordan.
I want Michael B. Jordan to win, but like it's been projected that Timothée Chalamet is gonna win.
I don't want to see him win.
I know. I think it would be a bitter win. I think the whole crowd would be like,
oh.
It'd be so awkward.
I mean, I also think one of the biggest upsets would be if Jessie Buckley doesn't win Best Actress. I mean, I do think the actress categories are actually some of the hardest, like the toughest for me to try to figure out who deserves it, because I think they're all so good this year, but I think it would be shocking if Jessie Buckley doesn't win for Hamnet. I feel like she's like the pick, you know?
Yeah, I also do want Frankenstein to win some things. I really hope it does.
I think Frankenstein is going to win at least costume and maybe like production or maybe makeup, like one of those.
I hope so.
I think it's got one of those.
I hope so. I feel like it might be one of those movies that people are like, you're lucky you're even nominated.
I mean, maybe.
Which is ridiculous because I honestly feel like Oscar Isaac should have been nominated with Jacob Elordi. Like, that's crazy in my opinion. And Jesse Plemons, I cannot believe.
He got robbed. He was supposed to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and he didn't even get a nomination for Begonia.
That is evil.
He was so good in Begonia. Oh, I love that they're trying to like actually recreate the scene. That's so cool. I'd be perfectly fine with it. Oh my god, let's go.
Michael.
Shut up! Oh my god, he won. What an icon! Sinners! Let's go, it's your time. It's your fucking time.
Train dreams. One battle
No! Sad. No! Hi, hello. It is now the afternoon on the following day. So yesterday was Oscar Sunday and it was mostly a really great day yesterday. I was so happy with most of the Oscars. Like I was so happy to see Michael B. Jordan win for Best Actor. And I was so happy to see Sinners take home so many awards, especially for screenplay and cinematography, because apparently that was the first female to ever win for cinematography. So like that's amazing. I was also really happy to see Weapons get an Oscar. I just feel like in general, it was a really great year for horror films at the Oscars. I loved to see that K-pop Demon Hunters ended up winning not only Best Animated, but also Best Song for Golden. That was so special too, because that was the first K-pop song to ever win anything at the Oscars. So like there were so many amazing monumental things to see last night. And even though I really did love the movie One Battle After Another, I enjoyed it quite a bit, but I was a little bit sad that Sinners did not end up getting Best Picture. Like I really thought Sinners was more deserving, but overall, like I can't complain too much. I thought the Oscars were really good yesterday. But anyway, I wanted to update you because this afternoon I have just finished reading Strangers in the Villa by Robin Harding. And like, damn, I have such mixed feelings about this one. You know how I was saying earlier how like Robin Harding is a thriller author that almost all of the time I end up giving her books 3 stars. And I feel like this book is actually going to be no different. I think I'm probably going to give this one 3 stars, which really sucks though, because at the beginning of this book, especially like in those first 100 pages, I thought this was so promising. And I felt like this would be maybe one that I could give 4 stars, because I think this book had a really great start. And I loved the Spain setting in this book and just kind of like the general atmosphere in this book. And I love that setup so much where like you have this couple who are like strangers who like show up on their doorstep and they ask for help. Like that's one of my favorite setups to a thriller. There was a point pretty early on in the book where we hit a part 2, and after we hit that like part 2, the story kind of changes, and I was really invested at the start of that part 2 because I was like, oh my god, wait, what do you mean? It was like giving us a little bit more information, and I thought it was all so interesting. But then shortly after that, I feel like I started to lose interest so quickly as we were getting to know more about like what was actually happening in this book, because I just didn't really care. And then for the second half of this book, I was mostly just kind of bored, to be honest. Like there was a few parts that I was just kind of like skimming the pages. I was ready for it to be over. And like, yes, there was a decent twist at the very, very end, which prevented me from like rating this book even lower. So at least there was something at the end to kind of surprise me. But I don't know, I just felt so disconnected from this book in the second half of it. And that is typically how I've felt about a lot of Robin Harding's thrillers in the past. I guess I just really like the way that she writes the dynamics between the characters. There is something about the way that she writes her thrillers, and that's why I keep coming back to them. Even though most of the time I only end up giving them 3 stars, I'm never like upset that I read it. I'm always happy to have read her thrillers because I do think that they're very entertaining, and I think she's like the perfect example of like a popcorn thriller author. I've never strongly disliked any of her books, but I've never really loved any of them either. I think I've only given one of her books 4 stars. I think out of all the books that I've read from this author so far, my top favorite from her has to be The Perfect Family. I think that was the only one that I've given 4 stars. But then I also did really enjoy the book from her that was called The Swap. I think that's one that I gave like 3.5 stars, and I enjoyed it a little bit more than I've enjoyed some of her other stuff. But I do think that Robin Harding has some of the most like unique and like fun thrillers. So I am glad that I read it, even though this one ended up being just okay for me. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this reading vlog. I'm so glad that I was able to get around to 2 different thrillers that have been on my TBR and 2 different romance books. I mean, I would say that this reading vlog went incredibly well because I definitely found 2 new favorite books ever with Starshipped and Man of My Dreams. I can already feel like those books are going to make it into my top favorites of this year. So like that is very exciting that both of them happened in this vlog. I would love to know your thoughts on any of these books. If you ended up reading any of them, do let me know what you think of them. And thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye.